All right, welcome to another episode of The Firm. I'm joined today by James Lizars from Thrive Accountants. James, do you mind giving us a quick introduction to yourself and your firm?
Sure, hi there. I'm James Lizars. So I own Thrive Accountants down in West Sussex. So we are around 11 years old now, I think, sort of zero partners from day one. My background is as a finance director in the advertising industry, and I guess like a few of my peer group have seen the opportunity in cloud platforms to come into this space and start up an accounting practice. So where we are these days, we're a team of eight, around about 100 clients, around about K recurring fee base, and that's split around 60-40 between finance function, financial operations, and compliance and payroll. So the largest part of what we do is actually working alongside our clients week to week and being their finance function. I should also say we're B Corp certified and just going through our 3-yearly recertification now. So have been for a while, and that's kind of, I guess, what leads us into this conversation, because the B Corp certification was one of the triggers for what we're going to be talking about now.
Amazing. So one of the topics of the conversation is all about blind recruitment. I saw you posting on LinkedIn, I think it was last week, that you're going through a blind recruitment process at the moment. And obviously recruitment is one of those topics that you speak to most practice owners and it comes up in conversation. It's something that lots of firms are struggling with or trying to do. And there's numerous ways that they might be attempting it. And I was really intrigued when I saw your post, and I guess wanted to learn more about why you're using it, how you're using it, and what have been some of the benefits. So I guess to kind of go to the beginning, like what was it that led you to explore blind recruitment as a process in the first place?
Yeah, a couple of factors in that. I mean, one is the B Corp philosophy is one that's rooted in continuous improvement. So you certify with a certain score, and then you're challenged from there to improve that score further. And the way it's measured is across a tool called the B Impact Assessment. So it will scan all corners of the business, the environmental impact through to how you treat your customers, your employees, and one of them is the recruitment process. So I knew that there was a way to be more B Corp in our recruitment process. In sort of the last 3 years, we've gone from the benchmark of certification, which is 80, to where we actually certified at 83, so we just got over the bar. Now we're going for recertification, we're at 105. So we've done a lot of improvement in that time, but it's a core focus of mine to be constantly working on that score. So that's one of the factors. It's like, what can we do to be more B Corp? The other factor is that last time I had a roll out, I was really aware of the unconscious bias that was at play as I was reviewing that first absolute stack of CVs. You put a job out on a job board, and I think it's pretty relatable that you get a load of stuff back. And I mean, you apply some pretty harsh filters, and I didn't like it. Thought there must be something better. So those two things are what led me to the what if question. And I guess what made it easier this time was that I'm also in a position where it's kind of we need to break all the rules and hire in a hurry. So I approached a recruiter to help with this particular role, and I just saw the opportunity within that to get someone else to do the hard work of filtering, screening, redacting CVs before they come across to me. So it sort of all came together as a moment where I could try it.
Nice. So partly driven by kind of the B Corp certification and looking to improve, but also your own kind of awareness of the biases within the recruitment process and how they could be better. So for the people that are listening that maybe aren't familiar with blind recruitment as a process, like just high level, what does blind recruitment consist of?
So essentially it's removing core bits of information that might lead an unconscious bias to kick in and make an intervention in something that should be more dispassionate. So for me, in this particular role, what that looked like was removing the name, removing the education section, removing all gender markers. I think those were the three core elements. Oh, location as well. Location isn't classically what you would redact, but I was able to give the recruiter a brief of how far out I wanted them to be. So it's a hybrid role. So I want them to be able to attend once in a while, not necessarily every week, but I know from previously that I would favour those that are within 30 minutes of the office. Whereas actually I think it's fine if they're, an hour and a half from the office. It's fine, we can work with that. So I wanted that removed from the process as well. So I was a little bit tailored around the brief to the recruiter.
If you don't mind sharing, what is the role that you were hiring for?
So this is, yeah, it's a slightly unusual one for an accounting practice, but again, it's because of the finance function strand of what we do. So it's an accounts payable manager. So it's really to sit across our bookkeeping function, which is quite heavily on the purchase side, but also we do quite a lot of supplier payments for our clients as well. So I wanted to professionalize that area of what we do.
Okay. What really stood out to me in terms of the information you stripped out was education, which I think for a lot of accountants and bookkeepers listening, they might be thinking, well, how on earth do you assess how much or how well they know their kind of job and what they need to do? So how are kind of skills and expertise evaluated as part of this screening process if they're kind of taken out of the initial CV and application?
I mean, talk about bias. So I'm a university dropout. I didn't need someone who's got a professional body particularly. I need someone who can do the job. So I didn't need to see a degree or AAT of a particular level or anything like that. And also, as soon as you get into that stuff, then you can start telling things about, or you can start assuming things about people. So which university they went to can tell you an awful lot about their socio-economic background, and I just don't care. I want to be in control of the process. I don't want some unconscious thing in the back of my brain that's not particularly smart just overriding decisions. So I want that removed. And as I didn't care about the education background for this role, all I was interested in was skills, experience, what can you do, what have you done, at least in the first screening. Then what's the point of having it in there? I don't need to know it.
So walk me through the process. You mentioned you were working with a recruitment agency. Do they specialize in blind recruitment? Is it something they do quite regularly for clients?
No, so they're actually another B Corp firm. So B Corps tend to work with B Corps because you've got a shorthand straight away. But no, I mean, I think their experience is that they have tried to promote this to employers, and it doesn't particularly land that well because it's a challenging concept. Like, the conventional wisdom around hiring is so well established. Doing something weird with something high risk like recruitment just feels like it's just a little bit too out there. So no, they don't have a whole host of experience, but that said, they know exactly what I'm talking about, why I'm talking about it, and how to do it. So it didn't phase them at all. It's just not that common.
So in terms of the actual process here, they put the job out to the market, they go and find some candidates, they bring the candidates to you, but some of those details have been redacted, so you don't get to see their name, their location, their education, their gender. What happens then? Did you do the initial screening? Do they do the initial screening? What does that consist of?
Yeah, so I mean, they do what recruiters do, which is come back with a shortlist. So they've put a campaign out there. They got their own black book open and had a little look through. Who have they talked to lately that might fit the role? So they come back with a shortlist of, I think it was like 6 that they initially fed in. High level exec summary. Candidate number 13579. Here's our high level summary from the conversations we've had with them. Here's their redacted CV, and laying it out like that. And my task then is to review that, go back to them with, okay, I like this one for these reasons, that one for those reasons. Really weird conversation, talking about numbers rather than names, but
Sounds like people have a superhero film, or like where people are being held captive, like prisoner number 911 or something.
It doesn't sit particularly well, but you get over it.
Okay. And then you mentioned that you've just done the first interview, I think, with 1 or 2 candidates.
Yeah, I've actually completed the first round interviews this week. Obviously you start to lift the veil with an interview process. So first off, it's you get the email addresses and you start to see names. So we scheduled the interviews. I knew exactly who I would be talking to at that point, but still didn't have the full education background. If I was interested, I could ask about it. But also, I knew what I wanted to hear from them. I also didn't want that whole concocted jeopardy of an interview process where that's no factor in the role whatsoever. You don't get blindsided by random questions. It's not about performing on the spot. I want structure, I want order, I want process, I want competence. So I gave them the questions ahead of the interview so that they could read them through, think them through, get comfortable, turn up feeling hopefully with the nerves deadened down somewhat so we could have a useful, productive conversation. Again, I mean, it's not I think this one's a little bit more common than it's getting more popular. I'm seeing more of it. Maybe it's because it's entered my consciousness and now I notice it when others talk about it more, whatever bias that is. But yeah, it's really worked. Like the feedback from the 3 candidates I interviewed was completely consistent, which was that they really appreciated having the questions first. They didn't feel as nervous going into the interviews. It was a much better conversation. All 3 of them really motivated, want the role, and yeah, it was a really good experience.
What kind of questions were they? Were they kind of like skills-based competency questions or something
Yeah,
else?
I think it's yes, it was leaving the sort of values-based questions alone for the time being. I really wanted to drill into the competency. So it's tell me about a time when it was that sort of question, like how would you design a payables structure? That what's your experience of managing remote teams? Tell me about cybersecurity methodologies, this kind of stuff. Very very skills and experience based.
Nice. Okay. And it may be too soon to say, but how do you feel like applying blind recruitment to this process has helped in terms of bringing more diversity to the candidates that you're speaking to? Like, could you say hand on heart the people you're speaking to now might be people that you may or may not have initially, picked for an interview based on what you know about them today?
I don't know that I could, because you don't know what you don't know. But I do feel like at least part of my mission was accomplished in that the screening had that element removed. As far as I can tell, I mean, someone else has got unconscious biases, I don't know. But as far as I can tell, yes, the screening allowed for a really wide pool of candidates, not least because of the area over which we're recruiting. We're based in Sussex, but essentially people from half an hour north of London were invited to apply. So yeah, it was really open. So in terms of diversity, I don't know, I'll never know. But in terms of I think probably the biggest learning for me was that you get this extraordinary clarity when you're looking at that CV. Because it is literally just what they've done and where. The comparison then between different profiles, you can really zero in on what's important. It sort of removes that noise in your back of your head that's just not productive, it's not helpful. So I think that for me was one of the biggest learnings. I was actually caught by surprise with that because I thought it was about diversity inclusion, but actually, as with many things in the sustainability space, what you start out doing for the right reasons, you discover actually has benefits you didn't really consider before. And yeah, I guess less of a surprise was the interview process. I had a very strong hunch that people would be just more relaxed. And I think around that, the pushback is, but how do you know it's not being fed a really good answer? And that's because it's kind of a conversation starter rather than a question. So they give their answer, and then you have a conversation about that answer. And if they've made it up, then it's pretty clear. You've got to be able to back it up with the colour of that particular story, and that's why it was very conversational, and that's why their experience was very conversational rather than interrogatory.
Okay. Like, based on your experience, did you at any point feel like there was anything that you wish you could have known or wish you had known? So you mentioned obviously when you're reviewing the CVs, it gave you great clarity because you were just looking at their experience and just looking at what had they done and accomplished. As you were going through that, did it at all cross your mind that there was maybe things that you didn't know about the candidates based on the limited selection of information that actually you would have liked to have known or wish you could have known? Or were there any other kind of challenges that you maybe encountered as you went through this process?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, recruitment via CV and interview, I think it's not controversial to say it's heavily flawed as a way of like bringing someone into your team who's going to work with you for years, serving your clients. It's a huge decision that we make based on this slightly weird, flawed process. So yeah, I mean, the one thing that these tweaks have absolutely not cracked is that you write a job spec thinking that that's what you need, and then you speak to candidates and then you hone it in those conversations. So yeah, I spoke to 3 candidates last week based on the brief that I put out there, but if I was writing the brief again today, there's one of them that meets it. So I don't really have a comparison across the 3 like for like. In some ways, good, it makes the decision easier. But yeah, I mean, we haven't really got into the values questions yet, and I've already got such a strong preference around a candidate that I think probably my gut feel is going to be right on the values front, but I'm going to have to hand it over to my team to actually just drill into that a little bit, make sure the culture fits there.
So talk me through what that next step looks like. So hiring on values, something we do at Journey, we have a set of company values, what we hold our team accountable to as well. I know for lots of businesses and firms, it might be something that they haven't yet incorporated into their recruitment process. So what does this next stage of the kind of recruitment journey look like for these candidates? What do they have to do?
So if you haven't figured this out already, I'm kind of making this up as I go along. Like at each step, I'm like, well, how can I do this step? How can I do this step? So yeah, I'm absolutely making up the next step as I go along. I had an idea earlier in the week of what it would be. It's slightly different now. But yeah, I'm going to get two of my team, two of the managers, to have another conversation with this one favoured candidate. I want them to exchange, what's a week in the life look like of what your current role is, or your previous role, if that was the one you enjoyed more, versus this is what we reckon it would be at Thrive. It's going to be different. Jumping from a AP role in industry where you're working in one big business to a portfolio approach in a scrappy little small business like / startup environment. It's really different. So I want them to have that friendly conversation, start exchanging what the culture might look like, but also going to feed in a couple of little values questions that I'm yet to write.
Nice. Okay. Just on that point, something you mentioned to me before we came on the call was that you started to use AI more in your recruitment process. How and where are you currently using that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a super helpful tool. So a couple of tools. I think actually it's both ChatGPT underneath. So the original job description, I've got a little conversation going where we've been designing what our job description looks like, doing the whole sparring partner with you're an HR director, appraise this job spec, how can I make it better, like get your mate as an HR director to come and tell me what's wrong with it. So we've built the job description like that, following on from that, so what's the person spec. So did that, then put it through a DEI consultant filter. How do we make the language more inclusive? And before then getting that across to the recruiter. So again, that's another tick box on the B Corp assessment, like making sure there's a process for inclusive language in your recruiting. And yeah, not a lot of tweaks needed, frankly, but any edits are welcome on that front. So that's getting the brief together. Once the redacted CVs come in, I upload those. This is anonymized information. It's not doing any harm to anyone. Let's review these against the job spec, compare them into each other, so you can surface some really nice summaries of what to look at, and starts then helping with the thinking of actually what is the shortlist, who's going to interview. So there's that, and then transcription tool on the actual interview itself, because they're remote interviews. Feed the transcripts into the model again. Like how did they do? What didn't I ask them? What should I have asked? What should I ask them in the next one? On balance, like who's meeting what elements of the criteria. So it's just it's like having a really detailed extra set of eyes on all of the information, and ultimately it validates what you kind of think, but also, so whilst it didn't particularly come up with surprises, it does give that extra reassurance that it's not just my gut that I'm doing this on.
Nice. If you had to guess, how much time would you reckon that has saved you throughout this process so far?
Oh my god, all of it. I'm awful at writing job descriptions. Awful. Like it's just so far down my list of things I want to do with my life. So even that alone saved me days. But yeah, I mean, you do one job description, and so many elements of them are actually repeated. It's got me a template, so that actually my whole team have got like up-to-date job descriptions. But that core element of what do you want from the role, like how does it fit into the business, it helps you write that, so it's actually a really good job description. It's not that generic nonsense that you might come up with otherwise. So it's not just the time, it's the quality, it's in our language as well. So yeah, so much. And just to actually go through those review processes of CVs, of printing them out, scribbling on them, trying to figure out who's got what where, it's just time consuming and hard, and maybe you get a bit lazy with it and don't do it as well. It's probably what would have happened, frankly. Just between us.
Us and the people listening. This has been super helpful and very interesting. So if there are other accounting and bookkeeping firms listening to this and they are interested in getting started with blind recruitment or implementing parts of it in their own recruitment processes, where would you recommend they get started? What would you recommend they do for it?
Yeah, so since looking at it, I know like working with a recruiter isn't the natural choice, but there are tools out there that are available to assist with a blind recruitment process. I haven't gone into it heavily because I haven't got the need right now, but whether it's full talent management platform where you can have this, or just maybe you get an admin or someone to help with it. Would be surprised if some of the sort of more frontline job board type tools haven't got this built in, or at least some of the fringe ones. But yeah, I mean, I'd start with a Google search to say what's available to actually do this for us, because I think that's the hard bit. Actually, is just the anonymization bit. Having someone else do it, super easy, obviously, but doing it myself, I don't know how I would go about that. But my first step would be what software is available.
Yeah, I'm sure there's got to be something. I mean, I know of applicant tracking systems, probably more at the enterprise level, if you're getting hundreds, if not thousands of applications that will do the anonymization for you. But I think for the average kind of smaller business where you're only hiring a couple of times a year, it's going to be overkill to use one of those. So finding something that could do this for you would be super. Are there any other things you have done or aware of that you're kind of thinking about implementing to help reduce bias throughout this recruitment process outside of what we've already spoken about?
At this stage, no. I am thinking ahead to our next role. This one, being a sort of a mid-level, number of years experience under the belt, skills and experience is what I was looking for. The next role is going to be a junior. So we've got 2 apprentices, currently likely to be recruiting another apprentice. So what does this look like for them? Do I ignore education? I've recruited a 27-year-old apprentice. I'd quite happily go to a 40-something career change apprentice. So have I got a bias towards that? 42 versus 18, yeah, quite possibly I do have a bias. I don't know what that looks like. I'll make it up as I go along with that one as well. And what I can at least do is anonymize it and take away some of those inequality type markers. And if it comes down to age, education, then it's less contentious, I would imagine, and probably for that kind of role quite important. I have a feel for it.
And if people wanted to kind of follow along of your journey of exploring blind recruitment as you kind of hire more people for your firm, where is the best place for them to be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I play on LinkedIn, so follow me on LinkedIn. I'm the only James Lizars, and yeah, I enjoy sharing the sort of the B Corp journey, because I'm a little bit restless when it comes to conventional thinking. The world has changed, no 2 ways about it, and what worked doesn't necessarily mean that's going to work going forward, or at least there's not a better way. So always just pushing the envelope a little bit where I can.
Amazing. This has been super helpful, mate. You've even given me a few ideas about what we can do with our own recruitment process. So thank you very much, and thanks everyone for listening, and hopefully catch up again soon.
Lovely to chat. Thanks, Jordan.